Hello everyone. Welcome to our presentation about cross-cultural management in China. We are Max Palacios, Albert Roca, Diego Escarunza, Albert Serra, and now we're going to start the presentation, and I hope you enjoyed. Okay, so we will start with a brief introduction, then we're going to move on how the culture works in China. Also, how does business work in China? Then we're going to explain a little bit about an article called Cross-Cultural Competence Among Employees in a Footwear Company in China, and how does would work an M&A in China. Okay, introduction. So basically we work for a Spanish footwear company, and right now our employer is looking in for expanding the business, and we, Max, Albert Roca, Diego, and me, Albert Serra, are in charge to develop some market research about how to help our company. And so we did some market research and we decided to study the Chinese market, and the best option for our company is an M&A, so we studied the next.
When you move to China, you have to take in care that they have a really deep cultural background that you will have to live in with order to adapt as quickly and easily as possible. It should be noted that through the history, different religions and traditions have shaped the culture to match the current culture of China. In their adaptation to this culture, you will find that they have been influenced by different ways of thinking. The first of this way that we have found is the Confucianism. What is Confucianism? Well, Confucianism has mainly influenced the Chinese philosophy. The main concern that Confucianism focuses in is to promote a good society based on ethical and effective government, and join it to harmonious human relationships maintained by benevolence. So this is the main parts of Confucianism. The second culture that has influenced the China that we have found is the Taoism. What is Taoism? Well, it is known that in the Taoist school, as it has its name, it must be borne in mind that the Tao is the one. What means that the Tao is the one? Well, this means, as we most of us we know, that the Taoism is the famous Yin and the Yang. No, so it means that Tao is the one. The most important thing of this is that you have to live in harmony with the Tao. Also, it's important to know that Tao is a fundamental idea that forms part of everything of the schools of the Chinese philosophy. Well, what is this? This is referred as the principle of absolute unity. And it's important to know also that the objectives of the Taoism is to reach the immortality, but not immortality like to live forever. Also the immortality of the spirit. This is all about referred to the Taoism. Next, we have the Buddhism, is the third one that we have found, and it focuses on the suffering and impermanence of this world. So Buddhism don't want to suffer, and they get out and don't accept suffering. So they avoid this by getting far away of the greed, the envy, and the addictions that they consider that this causes the suffering. And if you do this, you could reach the nirvana, that is the most important thing of the Buddhism. You have to get away from all the worldly pleasures and you will reach nirvana. So, the fourth one that we have on the Chinese culture is the legalism. You have to know that in China, the law is really important and they are really severe to those who skip the law. So you have to be really careful with that one. And know that Chinese people, to those who skip the law, they have really severe penalties to them. So the last one is that the Chinese is the art of war. That according to Sun Tzu, they say that this is more for military people. That they say that the most important thing is to subdue the enemy without even fighting. You have to know that they play with the environment and study all that one to reach that ending. To this, we have to add that the Chinese people has been really influenced also the last year for the new technologies that they have acquired and also provided to the world. Apart of this, they have really ancient cultural roots that are really important and they attach to them really good. And that's what have influenced the Chinese people and its culture during the past years and its history.
Okay, so to do business in China, you have to take into account and respect its culture and way of being. Understanding China's culture could benefit our Western workers to form successful business relationships in the region. To form a successful relationship, there are several points to take into account: the language, the material objects, and the three forms of nonverbal behavior. Normally, these differences between Western and Chinese culture are highlighted. Four phases of interpersonal relationships in China are discussed. One is the guanxi, the phase, the group orientation, and the age difference and authority. So regarding language, most companies have tried to do business comment that knowing their language is the most fundamental thing to be able to succeed in doing business. For them, knowing their culture and language make them sympathize a lot. In part, also the difficulty that this already entails, it's huge. Think that they have they have like eight or nine different dialects, but the common are three, the ones. So regarding material objects, they have a great power and relevance in doing business since they provide power and speak of your economic status. So it is important to appear power and fortune. In addition, this part is more important than language and almost than non-verbal behavior, in which it will be compared and contrasted with European culture in three key elements. One is the speed with which the information is sent, decoded and acted so open, fast or slow messages can dominate the culture. The second is the mode of information to send in a message. Cultures range from high context that requires a lot of background information to low context that requires little additional information with the message. And the third, the way in which time is used to communicate. Time is structured in a monochrome or polychromic way. In monochromic cultures, people focus on one task at the same time, whereas in polychromic cultures, people engage in several things at once. Europeans tend to be more monochromic. Plans and schedules as are they are, and they have to be followed to the letter. While Asians are not so important for them, it can change at the end of the day. Also, we are going to talk about Guanxi. The logic of Guanxi is that people are expected to seek out personal connections when they find themselves in difficulties or in need of assistance. A key to doing business in China is personal connections. The right personal connections can bring cheap and reliable material supplies, tax concessions, approval to sell goods domestically or for export, and provision of assistance when problems arise. About face, they suggest that there are two types of face. One type represents the confidence of society in a person's integrity and reputation, and the loss of this through misconduct cannot be gained. So once you lost, it's difficult to be gained again. A second type of face stands for the prestige that can be achieved or lost. In this regard, amount of face a person has is a function of social status. That, as we said, once is the most important part. About group orientation, it is a crucial factor in understanding Chinese culture is the relative importance of the group. Styles of behavior within organizations differ significantly across cultures. Some societies have an individualistic orientation while others have more collectivistic orientation. In societies like China, group functions are more important than individually identified contributors. National organizational goals are basically the soul of consideration. And last but not least, the difference to age and authority. In China, age reflects maturity. trustworthiness, and seniority. The roots of the Chinese respect for authority is in five cardinal relations between sovereign and minister, father and son, husband and wife, old and young, and between friends. These relations have served effectively to control social behavior in society. Chinese have to be observed and act according to the norms prescribed for each instance of interpersonal relations.
When we are dealing with Chinese workers, we have to take into account many factors before we start because this is a very different culture from the one we know. If we do not have a great knowledge of cross-cultural management in China, we can fail in the internal communication of the company and our relationship will end. Chinese people is strong in collectivism and medium in feminism. The Chinese depend more on groups or institutions to determine what they should do and emphasize loyalty to the group. They are more likely to cooperative with others to avoid risks and reduce responsibilities. Since Chinese people come from a strong collectivism and medium feminist society in which harmony and personal relationships are emphasized, they will try to use indirect ways to avoid direct and open conflict. When they face conflict, they prefer to use authority to suppress it or settle things in private. Also, they prefer to resolve conflicts through negotiation and compromise. Chinese managers usually lack the adventurous spirit and the sense of risk. They dare not make immediate decisions if they feel circumstance is uncertain, which may deprive them of the opportunity to compete in the market. In most of the case, they would like to make comparative safer and less risk decisions at the expense of the business opportunity.
Okay, so if we do the M&A in China, first we gotta look upon our employees, how they would work in China. And basically, Spaniards themselves are very friendly when it comes to receiving and meeting someone. And after all, we're a country where a large part of our GDP comes from tourism. And at some point in our lives in Spain, we have interacted with foreigners. And also that a foreigner asks us about Spanish food, wine, life, and the climate, we love it and we can have long conversations with that. And if our workers started working in China, they would encounter a few barriers, and I have no doubt that they will do their best for them. But the Chinese is very closed and respect to fit in with people from outside, it's very difficult. And this is why our employees will have to be very careful and gradually interact with them. And also, it's very important to know that it's not about how we differ, but about how we are alike and how we can work together. And once this is understood, things will begin to flow. Okay, but how the Chinese employees gonna act about the M&A? So in the event that our company wants to proceed to do an M&A in China, it has to take into account different factors and must must be attentive to the reaction of its worker as well as the current ones as those that it will have with the M&A in China. And because due to globalization, mergers and acquisitions have increased, but is still the case that for employees, an M&A is one of the most difficult organizational changes they may experience in their professional careers, basically. And on top of that, if the acquiring company is, in our case, a European company, can be fatal for the company and the workers due to cultural distance, cultural clash, and work alienation. And thanks to a study called How Do Employees Adapt to Organizational Change driven by cross-border M&As, a case in China, carried out by Gu Hiekok Chung, Jingdu, and Jin Nam Choi, we have been able to learn what would happen if we wanted to carry out this process and how we should act accordingly. And first of all, we have to bear in mind that the culture in China is based on Confucianism, collectivism, and socialism. So it has to be respected, but that is why M&As are also often complicated, since European culture is based on liberalism, individualism, and capitalism. And to face this study, we have looked from 3 points of view. The first one, psychological perspective. Employees are frequently exposed to high levels of psychological distress, role ambiguity, and anxiety from uncertainty. Also, social perspective. Employees both in acquired and acquiring firms tend to classify people based on their origin firm, so they experience difficulties in overcoming biases. And a cultural perspective, that it would be combining two distinct organizations with different cultures often leads to a cultural clash or collision that undermines performance. And once detected these point of views, the article makes it clear that the assurance of job security and the provision of training as critical managerial interventions are key in the development of the M&A. And also that the values of the workers are recognized and assigning them jobs that fit with their qualities after the treatment is very important to relax them and raise their self-esteem. And to help them and make them feel welcomed in this new stage of their professional life, we will divide it into 4 phases. The first one, it would be change management practices. This will be done from trainings, making it clear that their position is assured and with a lot of communication, since thanks to the dialogue, we move on to the second point, that it would be psychological counseling. Basically, you have to listen to them, help them where possible, and give them jobs that fit with their values, whether personal, cultural, etc. And to his abilities. If you give a worker who is putting souls to do finances, if he does not know how to execute the job, it will make him feel very uncomfortable and it wouldn't be efficient either way. Also, the third point, attitudinal and behavioral reactions and post-change performance. So after the change, it is very important to see their attitude and how they behave in the new situation. And if they feel that they fit in the company, they will be happy and also will continue to do a professional job, we think. And for the fourth step, it would be overall process of post-change adaptation. Of course, after all this process, it is interesting to know what the final result is. If we did a great job, or if you have to reconsider in order to do the better another time. And at the end of all, new workers and managers have to be very delicate with the process. Making one of them uncomfortable could have tragic consequences, and considering that they come from a collectivist society, the risks are high. And personally, having been in China, I can say that this is difficult to deal with them because it's seen that they feel a bit of inferiority compared with Europeans. But everything I have to say that we should be envious of them, basically. They do a very good job, and when it comes to professional jobs, and yeah.